Welcome to a new data science seminar. It's my great pleasure to welcome Professor Martin Dugas from the Heidelberg University Hospital. A warm welcome also to Lena Meyer-Hein, the chair of today's seminar. Lena, the turn is yours.
Welcome everyone. We have a local speaker today. It's my pleasure to introduce Martin Dugas. He has a truly multidisciplinary education. Actually finished his degree in medicine, correct me if I'm wrong, in 1994, and then did a degree in computer science 2 years after. So he really knows how to talk in a multidisciplinary setting. He spent some time as a research associate at TU Munich and at Siemens, also in the US, and then became a professor of medical and informatics at the University of Münster. And we're very happy that he then decided to accept the position in Heidelberg because he really is a medical informatics professor who wants to share the data, at least from my impression, and wants to work together and give people access, and that is very cool. So yeah, and I think this is probably also one of the things that you will talk about today. Martin, the stage is yours.
Okay. Lena, thank you very much for this kind introduction. It's my great pleasure here to talk in the seminar. Now I will try to share my slides. So if you have any question or comments, I will try to look into the chat, and but we can have a good discussion at the end of the presentation. So the title is here, it's MDM and OpenEDC, Next Generation Study Databases in Medicine. Now, let me, if you think about what is our ultimate goal, we want to do very great research and publish in the most prestigious journals. And if you think about here, the New England Journal of Medicine, Lancet, JAMA, what is the publication criterion? So if you look at the instructions for authors, what kind of research is published in these journals? And you will see the publication criterion is practice-changing research. So research, not only that is successful in a study, but research that is really used in medicine all over the world. And now, what does this mean from a computer science or from an informatics point of view? Well, if you really want to do practice-changing research, at some point in time, you have to convince the regulatory authorities. So you need to look at the Food and Drug Administration or the EMA, the European Medicines Agency. And because if your data is not approved by these authorities, then it's not allowed to use it all over the world. And that's why I think it is very important to look at the data standards, which are demanded by by FDA and other regulatory authorities. And if you look in the FDA data standards catalog, there are supported and required standards. And if you look at clinical study data sets, it's SDTM and CDISC. So SDTM, you might have heard, the study data tabulation model. Basically, it's a large item catalog, among other things, where predefined standard items for things like age, weight, certain lab parameters are predefined, depending also on the disease. And importantly, the CDISC data standards are mandatory. The most important one is CDISC ODM, the operational data model. You might have heard, if not, I would strongly advise to Google it and look what is CDISC ODM. It is a format to describe metadata, so data structures, blanks, case report forms, and clinical data as well. And the important feature of a CDISC ODM is that you have audit trails, you have information about the data provenance. It's current bad practice that in many clinical studies or research projects, standard office tools like Excel, Access databases, and statistics with commodity software is being used. However, this is not compliant with CDISC standards. And the reason is quite simple. If you think about an Excel table, you add a cell and you might shift your data and suddenly your data is simply wrong, yeah, or someone later on is changing your data. And that's why the regulatory authorities are telling us you need data standards where you have audit trails, so where you can see data provenance, so who entered the data, who changed the data, at what time, because otherwise there is no trust in the data you're looking at. And so I talked about data several times, so perhaps I should clarify a little bit what do I mean when I talk about data. From my perspective, there are 5 categories for data in medicine. So the focus of my talk here is about structured patient data. So it's about diagnosis codes, it's about description of therapy, like a procedure code, like a medication. It's about outcome, like survival, like quality of life. And this structured patient data is connected to big data, particular all kind of imaging data, CT, MRI data, microscopy, photos, genomic data, DNA, RNA-seq, and so forth, or sensor data from intensive care like ECG signals and so forth. There's a 5th category. It's patient documents. It is unstructured patient data. And the goal of all these natural language processing pipelines is to generate structured data from this unstructured data, because at the end of the day, you need to combine information about diagnosis. Is it healthy, disease 1, 2, 3, 4, to label all this big data. So these different data categories are connected, and for successful projects, you need to bring these different data categories together. Now, how should patient data be structured? Actually, this is quite a complex problem. It's about building appropriate medical data models for your research questions. So let me talk a little bit about characteristics of medical data models. So if you look at electronic health records from routine care, there's a great variety. So in a typical hospital, you have more than 1,000 documentation forms. There are very few standards. There's uncontrolled redundancy. Actually, what is standardized is how you do the billing, but the billing is only a very small part of medical care. You're summarizing what is happening in 1 week of medical care in 3-4 diagnosis code, some procedures code. So it's a very tiny data set compared to all the data that is collected during medical care. And actually for this documentation processes, a lot of physician work time is needed. It's 25 to 40% of daily work time of physician, so it's huge. When you think about clinical studies, so research, what we are talking about, it's also a lot of documentation. There was an analysis where 10,000 different studies were analyzed, and on average, 100 printed pages per patient need to be collected during a single study. So it's a book for each patient that is collected. And that's one aspect, so the number of attributes. The second aspect, which is especially important when you try to combine data from different sources, is the need for semantic annotation. So if you look a minute at these 3 images. So what is similar? What is the same between these 3 images? Well, maybe you can use your chat. And so what is common between these 3 images? Just to see if anybody is listening, or can you hear me? Okay. No suggestions? Okay, very good. Excellent. Nora, thank you. And Tom, thanks. It's a measurement, it's about sizes. So if you think about a normal database, the attributes where you collect this data could all be named size. So on one, it's body height, it's tumor size, or it's shoe size. And so it's you can see that just the label of this attribute is not enough to understand the data or to combine data from different sources. That's why you need semantic annotation. So attribute is not enough. And that's why we need medical terminology. So if you say this is C0005890, then it's clear it's body height, because that's the UMLS code for body height. You also could use a SNOMED CT code, then it's 5037300. Okay, the good thing about these terminologies is they're international, so they are language independent. So it's no matter it's English, it's German, whatever language. That's one aspect. And a problem, I would say, is that in the current clinical databases, the semantic annotation is missing for many, many attributes. There's another problem with respect to data modeling. I would say similar data are the real problem. So in one system, you can document patient has heart disease, yes or no, and you can say his pain level 0 to 4. And in a second system, you can have myocardial infarction, yes, no, cardiac arrhythmia, yes, no, so pain level 0 to 3. So you can see it's both about heart, it's both about pain, but the problem is, and the data is somewhat similar, but it's not compatible. Because, well, if you have heart disease, yes, it's not clear what kind of heart disease you have. And also, if you don't have myocardial infarction and cardiac arrhythmia, you could have 1 out of 1,000 other heart diseases. And for pain level 0 to 4, you can aggregate it. You can say patient has no pain or he has pain, but it's not easy to transform it. So it's similar, but not compatible. And so integrated analysis is a problem. So from these examples, what I would like to point out is that medical data models are complex and heterogeneous. And so, you know, when you're traveling a lot, so load your iPhone sometimes can be complicated to find a suitable plug. But there's one more problem in medicine, that most of these data models, the vast majority, are secret. I'm not talking about patient data. Patient data must be protected accordingly. I'm talking about just the blank data structures, blank forms. So there's a real need for transparency. So if you have here a typical example for a form to collect various lab values, this is not a secret and really should comply with FAIR principles, make data and metadata findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. I think in medicine, because medical patient data is so sensitive, some persons concluded, oh, we need also to protect this structural metadata. But that's a huge misunderstanding, a misunderstanding with very severe consequences. Because medical information management in general is a challenge. Now, I think we have physicists in our audience. And so if you just do a very simple thought experiment. So the problem is there are approximately 1 million different medical concepts. So age, weight, creatinine, hemoglobin are just examples of approximately 1 million medical concepts. So there are many different items to choose. And if you take a collection, maybe a catalog of 40 items, then if you do the math, this is 1 million choose 40, and that's 1.2 times 10 to the 192. So that's a 1 with 192 zeros, and that's really a large number. The physicists will know this number is much larger than the number of atoms in the known universe. Okay, so, and that's the explanation. If you develop such a data model independently, if two researchers develop a data model with just 40 medical items, the chance that these models are matching is 0, simply because the search space is much too huge. And so, on the other hand, if you want to have compatible data, and that's what we want to have when we compare our data sets with prior studies, when we compare data from different sites, we need compatible data, and it just only can work if we share our data models. That is here, I think, the key point I would like to make. And that's the basic idea of the MDM portal, the portal of medical data models. It is, so I like this quote here from Jason Scott. Actually, I saw it on the group that is working on metadata, and they have said metadata is a love note to the future. So my point here is, if we wouldn't have any data protection laws, if we could access all data, we would not be able to integrate the data, because we would learn that most of the data is simply not compatible to each other. So I think we really need to have an approach in the future. We need to talk about metadata and about how to design future data collections to make data more compatible. And so step one, from my perspective, is to look into metadata. So the overall goals of the MDM portal, we would like to improve the design of data models. It's about best practice sharing. If we look at clinicaltrials.gov, more than 400,000 clinical studies, 400,000 studies have been performed and are available, or some information is available on clinicaltrials.gov. So it's not a good idea to reinvent the wheel again and again, because it was already invented more than 400,000 times. So learn from prior studies, try to improve it, and make your data models, data structures as compatible as you possibly can. The next topic, it's about integration between electronic health record systems, EHRs, that are the hospital system where the patient data is collected in routine, and EDC system, electronic data capture systems, which are used for clinical research. And to integrate these different data sources, semantic annotation is needed. EDC systems typically have an English user interface, while EHRs are collected in the local language. So you need to map Körpergröße to body height. And this can be done most efficient by using semantic coding. And you need efficient and effective starter databases. In particular, you need to avoid double data entry between different systems, because that is a huge amount of work and it makes the data quality much worse. So here, that's perhaps the main message of today's talk. If you want to read more and to learn the system, to get to know it, go to medicaldatamodels.org. There's also a section where there are references and examples. In summary, it is a European information infrastructure for medical research. So it was initially funded by the German Research Foundation. And then it also was acknowledged as a European information infrastructure. It is a metadata registry to create, to analyze, to share, and to reuse data models. And you can use it to set up your next generation databases. At present, it has more than 24,000 medical data models with semantic annotation. So this is approximately 40 person-years of work of semantic annotation done by people with a medical background. And it has approximately 550,000 data element definition. It is multilingual. So for instance, the WHO is publishing data models, which is really a good thing. So some of the data models are available in up to 30 or 40 languages. Most content is available in English and in German. Here is an overview of the system. So researcher can use a Google-like interface to identify, to retrieve data models, to reuse. He or she can also comment data models, can analyze it, so can compare different data models regarding overlap or similarities, can of course create new versions of data model and share these data models. It's an open access platform, so it's multilingual, it provides advanced semantics. It has various export functionalities. So you can export item catalogs, you can generate eCRFs, and you can import it into your own research database. The MDM team is processing a lot of raw materials, so we try to identify item catalogs, case report forms from various sources, also clinical routine forms. For instance, more than 1,000 routine forms from my prior hospital in Münster are available in the system. We are currently in the process of also making the routine documentation forms from Heidelberg University Hospital available. We look into other metadata registries, available data standards from scientific organizations, and try to get it published. So that's an overview. So most content is from clinical trials, from clinical studies. We have a lot of medical specialty related material, and that also includes these models from specific hospitals. That's a world map of our user base. So as of yesterday, we have 6,900 something users worldwide. So that's only the registered users. So you can go into it and look at all the data model. You only need to register if you want to access all the different export formats. Because in the beginning, when we started it and did not have this registration process, some Google and other systems say downloaded all available material again and again, and they produced so much load that the server was breaking down continuously. So we decided to have the more resource-intensive metadata transformation process behind a simple registration mechanism. So here, just some examples. An easy example is the WHO-5. That's a standardized questionnaire for quality of life. So you enter the keyword, then you can see it. You already can here see this 5-star rating from the user. You can see there, you can filter by keywords. We use mesh terms, and there's also a table of content where you can find your data model according to this topic. And when you click, then you see this questionnaire over the last 2 weeks. I felt cheerful and good spirits. Categorical items, so 5 very simple questions. By the way, you can go ahead and use it. It's very simple to analyze. So you get up to 5 points per question, and then you sum it up, multiply it with 4, and then you have your quality of life score for today. It was developed by a very well-known psychiatrician from Denmark. It's available in 30 languages. You can see that our also Chinese, in African languages. So it's because it was provided by the WHO. Here you can see the keywords. These are the mesh terms. So you can also find it by a mesh search. Here you can see the different download formats. I think that's an interesting aspect, because I have the impression that many people in medical data science are using in different technological worlds. And so the primary format here is the CDISC ODM, because we would like to provide the systems in a way that can be used in a regulatory setting. If you have office formats like PDF, Excel, you might have heard of HL7 standards, which are very important in the field of routine healthcare. So we provide it in HL7 CDA format. We have all these FHIR formats you might heard about. So also from the HL7 organization in various flavors, in JSON, in REF, or in XML format. We have formats here like you might have heard of Macro, which is a frequently used EDC systems, or Open Data Kit, Open Clinica, RedCap is a frequently used study database. If you're developing apps, you can use here, download it in ResearchKit or ResearchKit Swift format, or you can also download SQL database definitions. And when you're doing statistics, you also can have definitions for our data frames. So no matter if you are working in a clinical setting, in a more statistical setting, or more in a computer science, software development setting, it's all the same medical content. It's provided in different technical formats. So just to give an impression, here's the CDISC format. You can see here the item group definitions in the various languages, or here the HL7 FHIR format in a JSON structure. And here the same content available when you are developing apps, here the ResearchKit format. A large amount of our work goes into the semantic annotation. So you can see the WHO has 5 questions, and each question has here 6 different categories. And here on the right-hand side, you can see these different UMLS codes. So like I felt cheerful and in good spirits is UMLS code C3261637. Assigning these codes is not only a lot of work, actually it requires medical knowledge. So for a physician, it is clear that creatinine in serum is almost identical to creatinine in plasma. So we assign the same code. So the coding approach we apply is if an item is so similar to another item that you can merge the data, then we assign the same code. Okay, and by this means, we can provide a system. It is called the CDE generator, the Common Data Element Generator. Here is the link to the paper where you can read more about it. So you can compare two different data models. For instance, in this example, 5 different diabetes studies were compared. And you could see that, for instance, in 4 out of 5, glycosylated hemoglobin A, a lab parameter important in diabetes, was collected. And here you can see the different exact questions that were used in the different studies. So, and here it also add to cart, so that what you can do is you can select the definition you like and reuse it in your own model. And the good thing about the semantic annotation is that you can do an analysis, which we call, you can produce a cumulative concept coverage plot. The question is, if you have here 5 different data models from different clinical setup, the question is there a core data set? So what is the overlap of medical concepts, the overlap of item definitions? And for instance, here you can see then when you use the 13 most frequently used concept, you cover 28% of all concepts used in the setup. So I think that is a tool where you can, in an automated fashion, compare different data structures. Most recent work regarding our MDM is here a link to the NCBI in the US. So MDM is focused on metadata and helps you to set up your own study database. But in a real research project, you would like to compare your data with existing published data. And there's a very, very interesting database, you might know, the dbGaP, the database of genotypes and phenotypes. And they have a collection of more than 2,000 real clinical study data sets for various diseases. These data sets are not open access, but you can request access to a data set if you say, I use it in my own research setting. And so what we recently started is, and so far we processed, so there are more than 2,000 studies available, a huge amount of data set, also including genomic data and imaging data and various lab and clinical data. And for approximately 10% of these study databases, we processed these data setups for MDM. So you can have here the item definitions, and here you have the link to the full description of the dbGaP dataset. So you can design your own database in a way that it is 100% compatible with dbGaP. So when you collected your own data, you can ask for data access at the NCBI, and then you have an independent external control group. What I wanted to show you in this section here, that the data model is key, not the file format. So you can export our data models in MDM in 20+ formats. That is a technical step. But the real complexity comes with the way we represent the reality here, the reality in medicine in a computational context. So if you look at the image of an apple, that's how Claude Monet looked at an apple, and that's how Picasso represented an apple. So you can export this data in JPEG, in PNG, in TIFF, you name it. That's not really interesting. The interesting is that here you have very different representation, and I cannot tell which one is the best or which one is true. It's a different representation, and you need to choose in your setup what is the most appropriate data model to work on the research question. Now, when you have the model, the next step obviously is software development. And I think there are really good reasons for model-driven software development in medicine when dealing with structured patient data. Why? Because we are developing software that is directly used with patients, so it needs to be appropriately tested, it needs to be validated and certified. And when you have a very well-designed model-driven software development, this testing is a lot easier and a lot more reliable than when you manually type in each item definition and you need to test each item, each data model, and each version of a data model, because these medical data structures change over time. When you look at a clinical study, that it's called amendments. That means that some details of the data you are collecting is changing. So and you need to revalidate your software. And of course, it's about scalability. So when I talked in a typical setup, you have on average 180 pages of structured data per patient. Of course, you have repetitive items, but in a typical setup, you have at least 1,000 to 2,000 different item definitions in a real-world setting. And when you would like to test the software, manually testing thousands of data items is not efficient. So in general, the idea is I have a data model and I would like to generate my software, my electronic data capture software for my research project. And when you see it now from a regulatory perspective, well, if the FDA wants to have the data in ODM format, then we have a data model in ODM format and we need to generate software. And that's why we developed OpenEDC as a reference implementation how to do it. So it was done by Leon Greulich, one of my PhD students. So here's a paper if you want to read more about it, about requirement engineering, about IT architecture, about how to use it, also how to, because it's open source, you can extend it and adjust it to your specific setting. And it's also, please go ahead and test it. You can directly use it with an MDM. MDM is, at this point, it's not only a collection of blank forms of metadata, it's actually a collection of databases ready for use. Because recently we added this button, it's called Start Data Capture. So please go ahead, go into medicaldataModels.org, call it WHS5, and press on Start Data Capture. What's happening? When you press it, then a piece of code is loaded into your browser. So it's not, the data is not going to some central database. So we are dealing with sensitive data. So the software is installed on your PC. And then you can immediately start data capture. You can say add a patient, and then here the questionnaire is showing up. You can say in the last 2 weeks I was in good in spirits, mostly and so forth. And you can this type of view, and then you can edit it. So you can add items, choices. You can review these item definitions. And there's also an overview where you have the list of these items. You can change the order. You can look at the semantic annotation. You can see it's the mandatory items and so forth. There are many functionalities. Please look into this paper and test the software. And we are looking forward to any kind of feedback how to improve it. And if you want to join the open source development team, please contact us. You can immediately export the data in ODM format, and ODM covers both the metadata structure and the clinical data. So I think this is demonstrates how this open metadata, how fair metadata can be used to actually produce working software. And here in Heidelberg, in the hospital, we are going one step beyond because we want to use this type of data capture software in the clinical setting. So with integration of the electronic health record system. So PowerPoint is a very powerful software. You can solve very complicated problems just with a few clicks. So you can see you can give the doctors or the patients tablets, and you collect data only once and transfer it into your study database or into the clinical software, the EHR, which is ISH Med here in Heidelberg and many other big hospitals. To do so, there are some technical prerequisites you need to comply with. So we are using the standard iPads provided by the IT center. Interesting. So you have, it's also abbreviated by MDM. MDM here means medical device management. Then we need to connect it to the wireless LAN. The server is hosted by the data center of the hospital. And then we use HL7 interfaces to transfer the data from the EDC system into the EHR system. And here we use the standard mechanism. So this should also be usable in any hospital. It's the HL7 medical document management message. So again, it's MDM to transfer the data into the clinical system. So if you want to do research compatible data capture in a hospital setting, you need triple MDM. You need the CRFs from the medical data models portal. You need a system with medical device management to collect the data, and you need the medical document management message to transfer the data into the EHR system. So here's an example how it looks like. It's a very simple example. So you scan the patient label, patient name is confirmed. You select a set of data forms that need to be collected, either patient-related forms or doctor-related forms, to do data entry and then transfer to EHR, the study database. Here's like ISH Med looks like. You can see it's not a very fancy GUI. This is a software which is 30+ years old. But you can click on a patient and then you get this data presented here on your screen. This is a summary slide. What you can do with MDM and OpenEDC, what are, from my perspective, important components for next generation study databases. So it's first of all, I think that's the key idea, not reinventing the wheel. It's about reuse of existing metadata. So retrieve models, select models, edit models. And in this process, you can or should do semantic analysis. So compare various options for models, look into CDE, common data elements. This is also very important when you would like to reuse existing data from other sources. So I did not talk here about all what can be done to extract data from the hospital database, but of course it makes sense when you plan a new data capture system that you compare the data you would like to have with data that is already existent to avoid double entry of data. It's you're losing a lot of time and you're losing data quality. So you design a model, you should publish it to make it fair. Well, in case if you do something really completely new, you also can start with a new model. You need a feedback cycle, so get comments from your research team. Also use user ratings from the community. At some point in time, you will have a final version. Actually, a final version is not really existing because it's a moving target. It's changing all the time, but a version that is good enough to use it to collect data, you can publish it using a digital object identifier. So to make it citable, you should distribute it. And then I think another important aspect is this idea of model-driven software development. So it's not about manual coding of a database item by item. It's about taking a machine-readable description of a database and generate your data capture system, and then build an integrated database with routine data and with new research data. So to come back to my initial slide, we would like to do a practice changing research. And so we need really to design next generation study databases to make our research practice changing. So we really need to learn from the past. So metadata is a love note to the future. And we also, regarding data standards, we need to be flexible and we need to take into account what are the formal requirements. And this CDISC ODM actually is a really very powerful standard. It's much better than CSV and other things which are used to transfer data structures and data between different systems. I would like to acknowledge this is not my own work. This is a work of a team. So only for the semantic annotation, we spent 40 person years. We had a lot of software development. So I would like to acknowledge the work from my OpenEDC team, MDM team in Heidelberg, and my prior team in Münster, as well as from many clinical partners who agreed to provide content to our system and also to use it. So that's my summary slide here. I'm looking forward to your questions, and thank you for your attention.
Yeah, thank you very much for this cool talk. And I also posted the URL of the paper so everyone could log in and yeah, read everything there. Also, you have the opportunity to raise your hand or ask the questions directly. So yeah, feel free to do so. And in the meantime, Lena, do you want to start with the questions?
Yeah, I also have a question, but Keno already raised his hand, so I can wait for Keno.
Ah, perfect.
Yeah, thanks. First of all, thank you for the great talk. I think this is a really exceptionally important project. And next, I would like to apologize for comic noises in the background. I swear I have not been watching cartoons. My kid is here at home. So the question is, if we want to, I think if we want to establish this in breadth, then we will probably need software support from the vendors, of course. And I think this is always problematic because they don't want to take the additional workload of something that they do not benefit from directly. How do you think, what would be the next step to get that into motion?
I would say, well, I think the first step is we really also on the political level, we need to promote this idea of open metadata. So 7 years ago, I published together with other colleagues a memorandum open metadata that we say from a research perspective, we need to have open metadata. And also as reviewers, we really need to make sure that this is published. With regard to the commercial software companies, my opinion is we should do it a little bit like in the UK. In the UK, if you are a doctor and if you don't like your software, then you can export all your patient data in a given file format and upload it into a new software solution. And in Germany, this is not yet possible. So if a hospital or if a physician in practice is not happy with the software, well, he needs to set up a new system, and he's losing all prior data, or converting the data from the old system to the new is a nightmare. It takes ages and is very costly. And what is happening is that you have a system like ISH Med. It has a GUI. You have seen one screenshot. You could see it is from the past century, and it's simply bad software. But for a big hospital, it costs a huge amount of money to change the software. So if we had a universal export format for data, then a new software company could provide better software and we could easily switch it. Yeah? I think that would be a key step, because right now a software vendor is selling you a piece of software and you are addicted. Yeah? And that's something we need to change.
I have a similar question. I mean, it seems, I mean, there's so much invest necessary, but almost nobody wants to do these investments because the gain is not so tangible in the very near future, I think, with all of this. So if I gave you 1 billion euros to spend in the coming, I mean, basically almost unlimited money in our world, well, I mean, how would you spend it? Where do you think we need the most investments?
That's a cool question, actually. from my perspective, well, medicine we have more than 10,000 diseases. And from a research perspective, each disease has different data structures. So you really need to design and validate data models for each of the 10,000 diseases. That's a lot of work. That also can be distributed to different communities. Then you would need a technical system where all these disease-specific data models could be used in real software in a patient setting. Yeah? Because the problem we have right now, if someone has lung cancer in Heidelberg and in Dresden and in Berlin, it's the same problem everywhere. But if you would extract the data from the hospital, you would see the overlap of data is amazingly low. So we have done this type of work for prostate carcinoma, for lung carcinoma, for myocardial infarction, and a few other diseases. And we found out that even in myocardial infarction, it's a quite standardized clinical workflow, but the overlap of data elements is between a high-end hospital is only 30 to 40%. Now, I'm not a cardiologist, but as an informatics person, I can say not everyone is doing it the best way if there's so much heterogeneity in data structures. So I would say if I had a lot of money, I probably would develop disease-specific data models and systems that can be used and then, of course, also I would spend money on training clinical people in developing and using the software. What I've seen here is very strange. Sometimes we put completely working software into clinical environment and they simply don't use it. Yeah. So I think we also would need to spend quite a few money to have more basic IT knowledge on the clinical side.
Yeah, a colleague who came back from China reported on this Chinese hospital which had a whole floor just for AI. So all people just annotating and doing all these things. And I just wish we had this $1 billion to invest more. But Kino, you wanted to ask follow up, I think.
Yes, I think this is kind of an open-ended question. There's no really finite answer, but one problem that we have to deal with that's very hard to tackle for us when we go into semantics and strict definition is change management over time. Because people changing definitions, wanting to clarify or further subdivide divisions, and then moving that changes to partners is also a nightmare. Are there any good ways of dealing with this, or is it just grin and bear it?
That's a very, very hard problem. Actually, the idea we are following in this regard is we call it federated electronic data capture. So the idea is for any given disease, you should have a core set of data elements where all experts in the field agree on. And then you can have extensions where everyone can add data elements he or she thinks should also be taken into account. And then you need to organize some process where maybe a scientific society specialized in a specific disease or disease area would in a regular manner would update these core data models. It's a little bit actually what in the US, what the NINDS, for instance, is doing. I think we would need an organization like the NCBI in Europe. That also, Lena, would be another idea how to spend $1 billion. We would need something, an organization that really takes care of all these databases and data structures. And also with sustainability, like PubMed, which is available for the past 50 years or so. No? But I think the step one, if you would like to harmonize, you cannot harmonize a secret. So, so the first step is so nobody knows what is best, and what is best is probably changing over time. So the step one is you need to publish it and have a platform where people can discuss it and reuse it. And also encourage this idea of model-driven software development. So when you have so complex data structures with hundreds, thousands of items, taking programmers and manually enter these items and take quality managers to identify the errors done by these persons, that's a little bit like building the pyramids. No? You have 10,000 slaves, and I think there are probably better ways to do it.
Thank you. That was very evocative.
Yeah. I mean, very, very complex, very important topic. For me, currently, this whole thing is the roadblock for doing proper medical AI in the clinics. So let's hope we make a lot of progress in the near future. Any more questions to Martin? Otherwise, yeah, thanks for talking about this important topic. And yeah, we see each other soon for the Heidelberg Data Science Strategy. And yeah, everyone else have a good rest of the day. Doreen, last word to you.
Oh,
Yeah, thank you very much for the talk. Thank you to the audience. And if you have further questions, you can still contact us or Martin directly.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye, everyone.